Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Random Adventurers podcast for the third week of November. I'm Nate, and I'm here with Ranger Liz.
Yep.
Bryan.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about D&D 3.5.
It's a secret.
I'm talking about Settlers of Catan.
All right. Well, Bryan, you'll be starting us off this week, so why don't you tell us about Settlers of Catan?
For the 5 of you in the audience that have never played Settlers of Catan, it's a resource management game. There are, the entire game is made of hexagonal tiles, forming in the base game a hexagonal full board map. And each tile has a resource it produces, either wheat, sheep, wood, clay, and rock. And each of those tiles also has a set number on that determines when it's produced on a standard 2d6 roll. And you're trying to get a good combination of resources. You start off by having a couple settlements on the board, and you're slowly building up till you have cities and more settlements, and you have long roads, and you're basically building a miniature trade empire. The reason Settlers is a game that I'm thankful for is it's really the first board game I've played that doesn't fall into like the Parker Brothers mold. So it's not like it's the first game I played outside the Monopoly Risk category of games, and it's the game that got me into all the games I like now. So after Settlers, I started playing. I got into Dominion and all these other fantastic games that I really like. It's a fun game. I can usually be up for the game. There's usually only 2 barriers for me to ever play Settlers of Catan. One is the board itself. It's made of cardboard usually, and we all know how badly cardboard can warp.
Yes.
So assembling the board can be a little bit of a pain in the butt, which is why anytime I see on Kickstarter, I really wish I would actually buy some of these plastic boards that you can get, so everything has a locked-in place that you can put it to make board setup a lot easier. The other impetus to me continuing to play Settlers is if after the game itself, because you're placing your settlements on tile, trying to get good resource production. There's always that game where no matter how good of a numbers you choose, you could pick all tiles that have 5, 6s, 8s, and 9s. There's
and
that
sevens?
Game. 7s are a special thing. Instead of producing a resource, a robber or pirate ship comes up and you steal resources from someone else, and other players lose resources if they have too many.
Ah, okay.
But there's always that game where, okay, I have 8s and 6s always comes up. I have 9s and 5s always come up. I have all the good numbers, but for some reason we constantly roll 11s and 12s and 2s. So there's always that one player who keeps getting the dice rolling against him.
Ah, the person who doesn't offer to the dice gods.
Correct. The one other thing is Settlers has a tendency to allow for one of my least favorite things in games is the Kingmaker. There's usually by the end of the game some player who's out of it, or just because they make a mistake, they allow someone else to win, even though it didn't really help them out. The last game I played of it, there was a one spot on the board where both me and another player needed to get to in order to have a solidify our chances to win, and there was a pirate ship there, so neither of us could build ships onto that spot. And even though I've already gone over 2 conversations as to why it made no sense for anyone to move that boat, someone moved it and allowed the other player to, which on the very next turn the other player got, he won partially because he got that spot.
I see.
So if I can get an easier way to build the board, partially because I'm the one who always has to build the board, or if I can get players who are more interested in some of the more of the mish scenarios for the game, other than just random board, I'm always up for the game. It's a fun game, and it's unlike games which are you amassing a lot of resources like Monopoly. It has a set end rather than having to conquer the entire map. You just have to get to a certain point threshold or something, or some other special condition on the map. So you don't have to wait too long for the runaway victory for the victory to actually happen.
Okay.
I keep on saying I'm going to buy one of those plastic mats, and maybe one day I'll actually do it.
Well, here's hoping.
Yeah.
I remember playing Settlers of Catan many years ago. It was the first time I ever played a game like that, and it was interesting. At the time, though, it kind of went over my head, but I will say it was interesting, and it was fun, even though it was sort of going over my head. I was having fun. So, I'm next. I am going to talk about a series of games that, sometimes when I'm talking about game series, I often forget to talk about them, unless I happen to be playing one of the games recently, or so forth, even though it is something that I constantly watch YouTube videos of, and a whole bunch of other things, because part of the reason why I'm thankful for this game is because of how strong of a community it made. And that's Pokemon. In particular, Pokemon Blue, because that was my first game. Nobody of our 5 so far audience members start getting into arguments over to which one is better, because they're all good in their own right. And I'm excited for the new one that's coming out. It's just, I can't help the nostalgic factor when I turn on my old Game Boy and I look over my team and I go, I love you guys so much. And then I turn off my Game Boy. Because I kind of like playing the new one and I can't transfer the old Pokemon to my new game anymore. I just, I like to give them their respects every now and then.
Say hello to the old team.
Yeah, say hello to the old team. My old Blastoise and Jolteon.
See, I'd at least give them something to do, though. Otherwise, you're kind of
sometimes I do go through the Elite Four. I'll sometimes take them through the Elite Four.
Otherwise, it's kind of cruel. You're just basically pulling them out, saying hi, and then throwing them back into the cage.
But no, when I was thinking about games, and I was just now managed to think of this game that I was thankful for, I stopped and thought, what is it about a game that makes me thankful for it? One, the nostalgic feeling, which I have talked about with Legend of Mana. The other one was confidence, which I talked about with 4E. But the other thing that I think makes me thankful for a game is being able to interact with other people with it. And I had, even though when we were living in Ohio, I was in middle school at the time it came out, and none of my friends wanted to play it or had any interest in it whatsoever, not even the TV series. So I ended up having to throw those years out the window for anybody. But then we moved fairly soon afterwards to Wisconsin. And that's when I started meeting other people around my age, even someone who just pretty much lived across the street who didn't mind talking about Pokemon teams and even would trade Pokemon trading cards with me. There we were in high school, and we were talking about Pokemon, and you know what? I wasn't afraid to. And I wasn't afraid to look up Pokemon stuff on YouTube once that finally came out. And there's just so many people out there. There's just so much. And the games overall, they're a very good RPG. They're always adding more to it. They try to keep the playing field level, even though there's some people who will say that they're not. But you know what? There are ways to take down those Pokemon that they say that are
It's
too
OP!
strong. If you know how to use your Pokemon correctly, you can use whatever you want, however you want.
Yes, I believe there was a Rattata build called the Dirty Rat Bastard, which was you train the Rattata to use
Endeavor. And then quick attack. You could have a level 100 whatever, and it's taken out by a little level 1 rat. So, yeah, there are stuff, you can't use that for certain things, but,
yes.
Everything has a counter.
Everything has
a counter.
You just have to be smart about it.
Yeah, because, if your Pokemon is faster than the Rattata, and it has quick attack,
you go first.
You would have priority.
Yeah.
So, interesting dynamic. I mean, even though you can say the storylines are cheesy, they were fun.
They
and
were.
I'm going to say this. A lot of people had no idea what to think of Lavender Town. Had no idea what to think of it. It was just this creepy thing that just seemed to be thrown out of left field. To me, going there got me angry and ready to go to war against Team Rocket. I don't understand how some people I don't know, maybe because I was going in as a middle schooler, so I was older than some of the other people who were playing it at the time. But I go to Lavender Town, I find out that the mother, Marowak, was killed, leaving her little baby Cubone an orphan, and she was killed by Team Rocket. Now, up until that point, not once have I ever heard of a Pokemon dying. Or being killed, I should say. I don't know if somebody mentioned that their old Pokemon had died or anything like that. I don't think so. But, I mean, there's the entire cemetery, and that was another thing that made me mad. Team Rocket was up in there in that cemetery, and they were keeping people out. They were keeping people from taking flowers to their dead Pokemon. And that made me mad. So I was ready to tear apart everything that Team Rocket stood for. Up until that point, they were just this silly little gang of idiots that ran around doing stupid stuff and stealing stuff. Then that happened, I was just like, no, you guys are done. I am done messing around with you. So I was ready to demolish Team Rocket. And that's why, I don't know, I never found the whole Lavender Town thing creepy. I know a lot of other people did. And that's always been, big on the theories and the creepypastas and all that stuff. But for me, Lavender Town didn't evoke those emotions. It evoked an emotion of rage because I was upset. But it says, I think originally in the games it says you white it out. But
but they changed that.
Yeah, they changed it to you blacked out.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoy listening to the songs by Nate, Nate Wants to Battle, and then there's also, I love listening to Jay Witz, and I pretty much, there's so many YouTube channels, Jimmy for the Win, all these other places that I listen to, and I've always watched these videos because I find it interesting, and I just enjoy the community that's formed from it. X and Y, I loved how community-centric it was. Even the end song, look up the lyrics because it's very much talking about how even though we might meet for a short period of time, our meetings have an importance. So, and it's when you finish the game, you see it, that song translated in multiple languages. So it's trying to bring everybody together and say this isn't just a game where you sit down by yourself. There's really a huge community out there.
Yeah. Well, okay. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll talk about D&D 3.5 and basically why it was special to me. We'll have our closing thoughts. So for now, let's have that break. And we're back. So, D&D 3.5. It all starts with a story that dates back to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I know I told everyone that Shadowrun was the first role-playing game that I really got to play. And that is true. Because prior to playing Shadowrun, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, one of the kids in the neighborhood who was like 4 years or 5 years younger than the rest of us had a parent who bought them the D&D books. And at the time, the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon had just started airing.
Oh, I remember that thing.
Yep. Now I just dated myself, but consider this. You'd just seen this cartoon, and then one of the kids in the neighborhood who, because he was older than the rest of us, all of us immediately respected him, says, hey, would you like to play that? And we're like, yeah, sure. And so he sets us up on this adventure. Now, he understood the rules and he understood how to play. He wasn't about to teach a bunch of 8 and 10-year-olds how to play the game. He figured it was way too complicated for us.
Was there a roller coaster involved?
No roller coaster involved. So what he did is he just said, I will tell you which dice to roll, you roll it, and I will tell you what happens. And then you tell me what you want to do. And so it kind of felt like doing just a pass-along
So you
story.
kind of were playing, but you weren't really playing
I wasn't
yourself.
really playing because I didn't understand everything that was going on. And what he would do is he would give us options. So if it wasn't something clear-cut like I attack the orc, he would give us options. He said, now you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this.
Yeah, that's kind of the way you play with people who are just learning how to roleplay in general.
So, years later, I got into Shadowrun. And then I ended up moving here to Wisconsin, and I had no one to play with. I, had to make friends all over again, and none of the people I really met seemed to be the role-playing game type. So I was without my, normal role-playing friends. Well, I'd just gotten home from being a missionary for 2 years. And the internet and instant messaging was still, it was 2000. So it wasn't in its infancy, but it was still kind of young.
It was 2003.
Well, 2003 when I got home. It was the early 2000s. And one of my friends said, hey, why don't we play? And I was like, well, great, but how? And he's like, well, I happen to have a server set up. All you have to do is connect in with Telnet. It comes free in Windows. And you'll be able... It's just a basic MUD server. But I've set it up so that you can roll dice in it. I'm like, okay. We played. And I got to play with friends who I hadn't seen in about 4 years. Skype wasn't along yet. And most people still had dial-up internet, so Skype wouldn't have even worked. But being able to just communicate and have fun with friends and meet new people was amazing to me. Not to mention, I got to learn the rules of the game. So, while I had played it years and years ago, it was, roll this dice and I tell you what happened. Now, I understood my options. And when I made my character, I understood what everything was on my sheet. And I understood how to add everything up and do things. Because I sat down and, read the copy of the PDF that he gave me.
Yeah, I, shortly after you started getting me back into role-playing games, and, I almost talked about 3.5, but when I found out that Nathan was planning on talking about it, I was like, no, you probably have more to say about it, plus I just talked about 4E. And, with that one, that was my first system, and so it has a lot of nostalgicness to it.
It does.
And it was my first experience with really that, other than
3.5 is where I started role-playing as well. It was my first version of Dungeons & Dragons, and I know I whine about 3.5 a little bit, but I still do enjoy playing it.
Yes.
So, I may whine about its warts, but it's still a fine game.
Yep. In fact, I was your DM for your first game, wasn't I?
Yes, you were.
And I seem to remember I killed your first...
You didn't kill him. You did not kill my first character. The party killed my first character. Because you took his intelligence.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, charge the plant creature is not a valid option.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
The brain-sucking plant monster, yes.
9 attacks into a warlock.
Not a bad...
See,
not
nowadays
good.
I would realize warlock is a ranged option, and considering the fact my character is a Raptoran, I would have just stood at range firing Eldritch Blasts into it all day.
Yes, maybe even gotten yourself a little range by flying... Even better range by flying up.
Correct. Because range artillery is terrifying.
It's funny when we sit back and we think about
flying artillery.
Our old experiences. Like, wow, I was such a noob when I first started playing.
Yeah. But that
I was
is...
a flying bird creature who decided to attack things from melee.
The range class.
Yes. But that is why D&D was special to me, and why it D&D 3.5 in particular has a special place on my bookshelf, and probably why I will never sell my core 3 D&D 3.5 books, just because those are special to me.
Well, that's also part of the reason why I'm reasonably excited about 5e as well. It's because it is Dungeons and Dragons in the end. I like a lot of other systems, but when a new system of Dungeons and Dragons come out or new stuff for D&D comes out, it's still just that little bit more special because it's where I started with role playing. So
yeah,
I can definitely understand that.
I used to, because I love dragons so much, and I way back when the internet was first born, I liked the idea of role playing. I just didn't understand all the numbers and dice and stuff. So when I first went on the internet, I liked role playing, kind of what I call freeform, without character sheets or dice, with other people. And I found this place with dragons, and I kind of noticed a lot of people were applying D&D dragon mechanics to it. That if you were these colors, you were automatically evil. So, at first I was sort of resentful to it. But then later on, anyone who watched my unboxing video, I was like, oh my goodness, this looks like this dragon. After so many years of playing Dungeons & Dragons, I've separated my dragons, and I just know when I look at a dragon, it's like, oh, that's a D&D green dragon from most of the editions except for 4th. That's the one thing I didn't like about 4th edition, is the fact that they decided to revamp the design. Several of the dragons, but in particular the green dragon, I did not like the revamping of the design. I am happy they returned it to the way it's supposed to be.
Are you gonna like Court of the Dragon Queen? Because you have to kill a lot of dragons, I think.
It's alright. It's alright. I know that's gonna end up happening, but you know what? It's the chromatic dragons, and as cool as they are, they're
douchebags.
Yeah.
If you get on the same form, if you do get far enough into it, you do get all the metallic dragons on your side. So.
Yeah.
Well,
right. That a D&D attack wing, the metallic dragons, I'm pretty sure are going to war against the chromatic dragons, which is why you have a copper, and then you have the...
Well, anything in particular you're looking for coming up that you haven't talked about already?
Just reminding you that Omega and Alpha for Pokemon are coming out on the 21st, and
Dragon on Steam.
Dragon, yeah. I will put out a video for that, but I don't really feel like putting out a video for it because it really is alpha. They really don't have a whole lot there, but I'm going to point out what they do have and what I like and what I'm looking forward to. I can't really say what I don't like because I'm fairly certain a lot of it's going to change.
Okay. Bryan?
One thing I want to talk about was the with the release of Rise of Tiamat. It's the first mid to high level adventure that D&D 5 has had, so they've released more of the higher level magic items. Some cool stuff in there, including magic items that can raise your stats above 20, which normally you can't do. The only thing else I'm want to remind people, Exigence releases for War Machine Hordes are still coming out, and the first spoilers for the next War Machine book appeared in this new No Quarter. They spoiled the new character Signar Jack Dynamo, so that thing looks pretty cool.
Yep. Alright, as for me, actually, I'm just going to remind everyone, for Big Stompy Robots, Heavy Gear Blitz has 11 days left on their Kickstarter. $115 gets you 4 armies. They're not the full huge army, but you do get enough that you could do games, introduce people into it, get people in. It's just a huge deal for $115. And if you wanted to start an army, $65 gets you 1 faction's everything that's been released through the Kickstarter.
Okay.
So with that, we will bid you all a good week.
And don't kill us, we're PCs.
That's right, we're PCs.